Hello, and welcome to this mid-August edition of Take 5 with Tony. Everybody wants a good economy, a strong economy that creates jobs, provides good opportunities with good wages. Everybody wants that. And most people would also agree that the economy ought to support families, ought to help nurture strong communities, ought to build our society overall. A lot of people have very different ideas, though, about how we do that. Do we cut taxes on the wealthy and corporations? Do we invest in infrastructure? Do we bolster our education system? Lots of very different ideas. But even among those different economists and politicians and pundits, probably one thing everybody agrees to, and that is we need economic growth. We must always have more economic growth as the means to prosperity, as the means to opportunity. Now, we're going to talk about economic growth a lot in this series, but right now, today, I want to focus on, well, how do we measure economic growth? How do we decide that we're growing? And there's really one measurement for that, and it's called the gross domestic product, or the GDP. The GDP has been around for almost 80 years now, and it is not only the most important measurement of economic growth, but really in most respects, the most influential measurement for whether or not we're doing well, whether or not our economy is healthy. So what is the GDP? Well, when I sell my produce at the Abingdon Farmers Market or to a local restaurant or a supermarket, I'm contributing to the GDP, those sales, myself and other farmers. When I buy compost from a local vendor in Blountville, Tennessee, compost that helps build the fertility of my soil, well, that compost purchase contributes to the GDP. When I bought my rifle at Mahoney's 3 years ago, I contributed to the GDP, and every time I buy a few more bullets, I contribute a tiny bit to the GDP. Now, when I take this rifle and I'm lucky enough to get a groundhog, I might help the GDP a bit because maybe I'll harvest a few more peppers and tomatoes and melons that the groundhogs don't get. But here's the weird thing. If I miss the groundhog and shoot myself in the foot, I'll actually contribute quite a bit more to the GDP. Now, I'll lose a couple of weeks of sales at the farmer's market, but that'll be way more than compensated for by the fact that that shot in the foot, it's going to send me to the emergency room, and after that, doctors and maybe surgeons, followed by pain-killing medication and probably a couple of months of physical therapy, and every bit of that will contribute to the GDP. That's because the gross domestic product is just that. It's gross, it's aggregate, it's total. And so it does not discriminate between good stuff and bad stuff, between things that prevent problems and things that create problems. Probably one of the best examples is cigarettes. When you buy a pack of cigarettes, you contribute a tiny bit to the GDP. If you buy 2 packs a day in and day out, year in and year out for 20, 25, 30 years, you contribute quite a bit to the GDP. But you know what? Your most spectacular contribution to the GDP won't be the purchase of the cigarettes. It'll be when you get emphysema, or heart disease, or lung cancer. Because then you'll find yourself in emergency rooms and hospitals and long-term chronic care, ventilators, perhaps surgery, and very, very expensive medications. Every bit of that contributing to the GDP. So you see, the main measurement we now have to determine whether or not our economy is healthy and by extension our society is healthy, in fact, not only doesn't discriminate between good and bad, but it kind of favors bad stuff. If you buy cigarettes or shoot yourself in the foot or you pollute the environment, not only do you contribute to the economy when you do it the first time, but so too do you contribute when then it all has to be cleaned up, fixed, the problem solved. I think in this time in our history, 80 years after the GDP was formed, we need to find much better measurements that truly tell us not just if the economy is growing, but that measure the real health of the economy, not just its total output. We'll talk about that in coming segments. So thanks, and see you next time.